uniqueness of recruiting these guys, yes. One, it's a 12% acceptance rate in the school. So it's a little bit different from getting kids on campus. Some schools, some administrators want coaches to have 40 guys on the roster or 50 guys on the roster and have a JV team. Ours is the opposite of like, it's really hard to get in here. So our administrators are like, get as many as you can, but it's got to be kind of tight because it's hard to get accepted in here. And we don't need more students to fill dorms or to get extra tuition money or whatnot that some schools have to do. So it's really unique. Right now, I'd say I recruit the whole country. The hotbeds for us is kind of like California, like West Coast, California, Washington, East Coast, New York area, a couple Maryland guys, and then like a lot of Illinois and some Minnesota kids. But it's academics first. Like my first questions are, send me over your transcript. How many APs are you in? What major are you looking for? Before we even get into baseball questions. So it's learning the ropes and understanding like what the kid needs to in a school. Like a lot of times the recruits that I am talking to really are looking, education is the most important thing for them. So then if I can just offer them baseballs like, hey, this is going to be icing on top of the cake of an already really good college experience, then we end up in a good spot. But it's hard. I mean, I tried to go to a lot of Minnesota games, Legion games, showcases around here, and it's such a small percentage of kids that can get in that it makes it more difficult. It'll be interesting. I'm really intrigued to see with the 34 max roster at the D1 level, kind of what that does for recruiting. I mean, all levels of college baseball are going to get elevated because you got whatever it is, 1,000 or 1,500 less Division I players. Well, that just means every other level is going to get littered with higher level players. So I'm intrigued to see from me kind of how that goes with Ivy Leagues have less guys to recruit. Your high academic D1s have less guys to recruit. Are guys, high school guys, going to lean more junior college route or still look for like, I want that high level D3, high level academic institution?
That makes sense. And like this leads into one of my questions I really wanted to ask you, which is about, so I know myself when I was in high school and a lot of my other buddies who wanted to play at a high academic school, you think about a head first camp, a show ball camp, or do you email a coach like you? What's your advice to catchers, but also just high school players who want to play at a school like Carleton? What's the best way that you found for them to like reach out to you?
Yes, great question. From the jump, an email, and especially later in your high school career, the hardest thing I think to explain, I guess, from a coach.
Oh. I think it cut out for me.
Crazy Wi-Fi.
Okay, there we go. I can hear you again.
We back here?
Yep. Yeah, we're good.
Okay, let me adjust so I can hear you. Okay, can you hear me here?
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay, perfect. I got you.
All right,
yeah, so keep talking. You had asked what for a higher academic school, what's the best process? And I briefly talked of like, it's the age of information. It's easy to get information out there. With that, you can get overloaded information and you don't necessarily want to show bad information. So what does that mean? Like if you're a young sophomore and you know you're going to go do a hitting camp all winter and you know you're going to get in the weight room all winter before your spring season, so you know some of those metrics, your exit velocity, your throwing velocity, your pop time, they're going to go up. I would hold off on that case on a camp because candidly, most college coaches will scope through and look, okay, what's your age, kind of where have you been playing at? But sometimes it's you get your base metrics and you're scrolling through 80 prospects. And if they're a young sophomore and you're sore and you're not on-ramped and haven't been swinging well and your exit velo is 82 when you could have got an 89 later in the summer, well, then that information can just kind of get stuck out there. So I would aim right away to look at a showcase, and it's a head first, a show ball, a play to win are kind of the top three academic right now. There's a few other ones, but I'd look into one of those. With those three, all of their workers and coaches that work for those companies are really, really good, have great relationships with college coaches and help you get placed. So that is an option to do. But again, college coaches are looking for 1, metrics, 2, your overall stats from your high school level. So that obviously depends a lot on what level you're playing at. But nowadays, like, I will ask a kid, sometimes you don't even need to go to a showcase. If you're end of your junior year, you have game film video. So that's what I would get. I would get game film video. I get as many, if your team does Game Changer, has stats, I would try and get your stats from your high school or your club ball season. And then I would just get video of those metrics, like, because there's stuff that every college coach is going to look for a catcher. And it's your typical stuff that you always hear about: your throwing strength, your receiving, your blocking, your framing, your transfer, your bat. So once you have some of those metrics at a high level, if you're throwing it well, you have a good pop time, you have good swings, and email straight to the coach with that information. For me, if a guy has good stats, that's enough for me in a lot of cases. Then I can just go on and we'll talk more, and I'll try and find some more game film from a guy. Some coaches like to see you at a showcase camp, want to see you more, depending on where the school's at, where you're at. Like, for me, there's some kids that I can't go and watch California kids during the spring play their high school games. So it's nicer as a college coach just to see them move around and to see them play a little bit more. But I think emailing and just knowing what your strengths are, knowing what your weaknesses are, knowing what college coaches are looking for. A lot of guys talk about like a 5-tool player. I would add a couple extra tools as a catcher. So, like, obviously your tools: hit power, hit contact, throw power, accuracy, glove, speed. You add blocking into that. You add controlling the running game. You add calling pitches if guys allow you to call pitches. There's more than just those kind of 5 tools. It's probably about 7 or 8 as a catcher. So understand what you're good at. Understand what coaches are looking for, which is your pop time, how hard you're hitting the ball off the bat, how you're controlling your pitchers, and trying to improve those. Overall, though, it's kind of the nature of the beast that showcases are probably, if you don't have a school narrowed down or you don't have 2 or 3 options that you really like, if you want to explore more, I would go to a showcase. If you have it narrowed down, you're like, I only want this area of the country, I only want this type of program, then I would almost go straight to just emailing those coaches straight up. And then see, some of them might say, hey, I need you to have an on-campus workout. Hey, I want to come watch you play. I need you to come to this camp. But a general rule of thumb, if you know, I'd reach out right to the coach or the recruiting coordinator. If you don't know, you want more options, I think showcase is a really good option because there'll be 20, 30, 40 coaches there. Then you can just get more of a feel for everything.
That makes sense. I think that'll help clear it up for a lot of guys because right, it's a blessing if you have the opportunity to, like, okay, I can go fly somewhere and go to a camp. Or like a school specific camp or a head first show ball kind of thing. And yep. I know that's what I thought when I went to the head first. Like, I wasn't sure what it was going to be like, but if you can go to one of those, and like I think what you said is so important. Like, if you have a foundation, you have the numbers and you have skills to showcase. Just literally, you have skills to showcase. If you can go and get in front of the coaches, like, sometimes that's all it takes. And those opportunities, those doors, they start to open.
Yeah, absolutely. The last piece I would add on that too, as you're like get further along in the process and you're looking and you're kind of deciding what schools, look at the team's rosters too. Because there's some times where it's like, this is like a dream fit. I think I could do great here, but they have 2 sophomore catchers and 2 junior catchers on the roster. So then it's like, unfortunately, you can only have so many guys at each position. You want to earn playing time. I hope that's the goal of every high school kid going to play college sport. Sometimes it just doesn't work out. But vice versa, you might find 3-4 schools you really like, and they might have 1 senior catcher, 1 junior catcher. So then that opportunity is there. So that's the extra piece, I would say, as you're doing your research into schools. Don't feel bad. Sometimes you have every skill that a coach is looking for, but just the way the roster go back.
Oh, okay. There we go.
Okay,
you're back.
Back on.
Nope. Can you hear me?
I think you're going and you're not frozen here.
Okay.
Not right now. Try and talk again.
Can you hear me?
It's breaking up just a little bit.
Okay. Let's see. Can you hear me?
Oh, there we go. Yeah.
Sweet.
You're back.
Yeah.
You're back.
So you were talking about just there was one more piece you wanted to add to looking at the roster.
Yes. The last piece is understanding the team's roster and just and knowing exact, like looking at, if you're a catcher, you want to be a catcher, to find schools, I would look at the team's roster and kind of see what they have as catchers there. And then you can kind of see also what coaches value. Like I would pull up and I'd look at the catchers that have been starting for that team. What do their numbers look like? What's their throwout rate? What's their average? What's their on-base percentage? What's their strikeout rate? Because, and I'm sure we'll get into this and talk about this, but different coaches have different philosophies on, hey, I want an offensive catcher that can just get the job done back there, or I need the highest level defensive catcher and the offense doesn't matter as much to me. I want a guy that can just shut down the running game. So kind of you can look at a team's roster, look at those stats on there to kind of see what the team values. And then again, if they have upperclassmen catchers, that's a good spot to start, and it's worth an email. If they have a handful of underclassmen catchers, or after you email a coach, they have one or two coming in as freshmen, it's going to be a little bit tougher. So it's honing your skills, and then understanding how to really market those skills, and understanding who needs those skills. Sometimes it's like, this is perfect fit, but they have 4 catchers on the roster, so it doesn't work out.
Yeah. And building off, I think that was a great summary of it. Like, then the question that I often get from younger guys is like, okay, well, what do I email to the coach? Because they don't want to like say too much, but they also don't want to just basically send a 2-sentence email. So like, what would your advice be?
Yes. You're spot on. And it's the intros can be kind of tough, and different coaches see it different ways. I like having more information right away, but it's not a big deal if you don't send a ton of information, because then I'll just ask those questions. The for sure things you're going to want, from my standpoint, it's always academic stuff. I think every college coach, if you're high level in the classroom, include that right away, because it's just going to show that like you can take care of business on everything other than just baseball. So I would include academic stats right away, because that's really what I look for right away. So include your GPA, and then include some video. And like you said, it's like, get good information, get good video. Don't send a 30-minute clip of you just receiving balls. Like, even if it's probably beautiful, coach probably isn't going to watch that. I'd say get some highlights. Like, really, you're marketing yourself. Like, as weird as it sounds, like, you got to show all of your skills. But again, it's human to human, so it's harder to just be like, hey, I'm the best. I had the best average. I had the best throw power. So it's that fine line of how to communicate that. For sure, get video, and then for sure include some metrics that every coach is going to look at. So your throw power, your exit velocity, your stats from high school. If you have a good caught stealing number from club ball or from your high school season, I would include that in there. Your pop time, obviously, your speed. Really any tools, especially the ones you can highlight. You don't got to put everything in there. I would highlight your strengths to the college coach right away, because a lot of times if you have 1 or 2 plus tools as a college coach, I'm just like, I can probably help you develop those 1 or 2 that you don't have right now, or that are just average right now. So have metrics, have video. And then the last piece that I think would help a lot is do a little bit of research into the school that you're reaching out to. And it doesn't have to be super intensive. If you have a major idea, make sure you go through their list of majors and make sure they offer that at that school if there's a major you want to go to. If you have a class size idea of like what you would fit in class size wise, take a look at their average class enrollment. If you have an idea of area of the country or size of the city that you really want, take a look at that and include it in there. So like, there's nothing better for me than a kid does research on Carleton before I even have to give him the spiel and tell him stuff. He's like, Coach, I saw that you have a great engineering program. That's exactly what I'm looking for. This is why I initially reached out. So just kind of giving some of that reasoning where I'm coming from, just to give the coach a feel of like, okay, yeah, this kid has his eggs in the basket. He's dialed in and he wants to be a really good ball player, a really good student athlete. If I get a message and it's just like, hey, coach, and then you can tell it's just a blanket 1 paragraph, I'm interested, Here's my stats. Some of those kids, I'll reach out to them, but some of it's harder because it's like, I'm going to care a lot and I'm going to put a lot into you. And coaches have limited time for recruiting. So it's like, I want to see that you care a little bit about this, because if you don't care now, recruiting's fun, right? Like it should be a fun time of like, you're getting courted around, you're getting offers, you got to make tough decisions. Coaches want you. So it's like, if they don't think that you care that much, it just makes it a little bit tougher on yourself. So I would do a little bit of research for sure into the school, into the baseball team. If you want to, I love when I get an email and it's like, hey, coach, was following along. Saw you guys had a tough battle with Gustavus last weekend. Like, that was fun to watch, fun to see the stats. Like, how are things going for you? Here's an update on me. Here's some video. Here's some stats from the spring. So a lot of combination of things, but video, stats, metrics, and then a little bit of research into that school could help you get more replies and just create some more traction with the coach.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. That's going to help a lot of kids because, I mean, it's like building a relationship with the coach, right? Like trying to show them that you care about the program. And like you said, probably in an era where, emailing coaches, I think it's becoming more popular, right? So it's like, how do you make yourself stand out and show that you actually care about what this process is?
Yeah. And a saying that like a coach is saying that I think about a lot as I'm coaching players is like, your players don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. It's a little bit different from a player's perspective. Coaches really don't care about your skill set or kind of what your tools are until they know how much you care about improving those tools and improving that skill set. So it's like, there's not a lot of guys at the college level. It's 0.1% that out of high school, maybe you're throwing 97 miles an hour, so you don't have to put in a lot of work to have success. It's a really, really high percentage of guys that come into high school and they have to improve on, sometimes it's just one thing, sometimes it's two or three things to have college success. So it's like, I don't care really. I care about some of the stuff where you're at now, but I really want to care, where do you want to get to? What are you willing to put in work to be able to get to that spot? So it's like, my job as a coach is to give you those tools to get to that spot, but you got to utilize those tools, put in that time to be able to get that done.
And that leads into a question that I had for you about, so looking at your team and just college players that you've seen and college players that you've played with, like back when you were playing, what do you notice about the players that succeed over the course of their 4 years in school, however many years? Like, are there any traits that stand out to you?
Yes. Obviously, it's easy to look at the physical skills first, and you do need some physical skills on a baseline to be able to have success. So if that's a pitcher, if you're throwing 67 miles an hour today's day and age, it's going to be hard to have success out there, obviously. So like having a base level, like you want to be able to hit consistent contact, at least in probably the 80 mile an hour range from an exit velo standpoint, or you're just not going to be able to get balls to the outfield as much. So understanding that from a physical standpoint, but what I've seen, whether the guys I've played with, played against, and now coaching these last couple of years, is there's a lot of guys with the physical tools that do not have successful careers. And there's guys that maybe only have one or two of the tools, but they have other pieces that make them successful. So what I've seen is mental toughness. Now, I think mental toughness has a huge array and a huge scale of kind of different spots on mental toughness for baseball. Mental toughness in swimming or in long distance running is, okay, I need to turn my brain off. I need to run as hard as physically possible. I need to go max out effort. It's a different kind of mental toughness. Like, that's really hard work, right? Physical to your max. Baseball is a different mental toughness, and I think it's a much harder skill to acquire and to develop because it's really not taught about, and it's based on failure in baseball. And so when it's based on failure, majority of times, especially the world we're living in, like, you want to have a lot of successes in life, right? You want to turn in your homework. You want to get an A on it. You want to get B's and A's on your tests and quizzes. You want to have a good family life. You want to have a good friend group. You want to be involved with stuff. So there's not a lot of dealing with failures and negativity in a real life, day-to-day standpoint. You're going to have stuff that you mess up, stuff that you learn from, but not as intensive as it is in baseball and not as much as it comes in baseball. In baseball, you can play through a game. You're a catcher. I mean, you can misframe 10 baseballs. You can swing. You can throw a ball away. You can still have a great game. And that's 16 mistakes right there, right? So It's the guys that have mental toughness are absolutely unflappable. And it's unflappable. You're going to hear it a million times in the baseball world of the uncontrollable things. So obviously the simple uncontrollable things that guys think about is umpires' calls, what they're giving you, how you're feeling that day. Like physically, you're not always going to feel 100%. What the weather's going on, what the other team is doing to you. There's so many uncontrollable variables that if you can get to a spot where you are unflappable, umpire makes a bad call, I don't care. I'm going to drill the next pitch. I'm too good of a hitter. Other team, guy spikes you going into home, like, okay, this is a tough situation. Like, I'm tough. I'm not going to shove them back because then I'm going to get a 2-game suspension. So it's really the smaller stuff of like learning how to deal with failure because it's going to happen. You're going to have an 0-for day. You're going to have a day where you give up 5 runs on the mound. The guys that can be unflappable and not care about that and bounce right back out to their next outing or their next at-bat and be fine with it and still have that confidence are going to be successful all the way through. I think mental toughness and then just your want and your care, which goes right into mental toughness. How well are you preparing? What are you doing at practice? What's your pregame routine? Are you scouting? Are you looking at the other pitchers? As a catcher, are you looking at the other team's runners? Are you checking out stolen base numbers? Are you watching guys run around in the outfield? The more you can prepare, because like I said, there's so many uncontrollable things that are going to come, the more of those controllable things you can prepare for, the way better set that you're going to be. Give me 30 seconds. I need to grab a charger here quick.
All right. Sounds good.
All right. I'm dialed back in here.
All right. Perfect. But yeah, like I think that leads me into a question about, so when you look at the catchers that you get, I know this is your 3rd year, right, at Carleton. And as you have new catchers coming in, and again, from your playing experience as well, like what do you think the biggest lessons are that young catchers learn when they get to college? Like the aha moment, like, whoa, like didn't expect this.
Yes. Gosh, off the top of my head, I'm going to go with there is many different ways to have success. So what that means for me, I think a lot of guys get in their head, and it's tough because if you watch MLB games or you go on Instagram and you see the perfect MLB catcher doing all his drill work, it's like those guys look perfect. They look like they have perfect mechanics. They look like they know exactly what pitch to call. They know exactly what hitters are doing. They know exactly where to be on every single off-speed pitch. Now, are they really, really skilled and elite at their stuff? Yes, but they're not perfect, and there's not one individual way to do it. And you can watch MLB games to see how different catchers frame, different setups, different philosophies on throwing down, 2 feet, 1 knee, back picks, all that. So as a freshman, as a young catcher, knowing there's not one perfect way to do everything, you cannot be afraid to fail, and you can't be afraid to make mistakes right away. And that's going to be, hopefully you're going to see the highest level pitching that you've seen. So right away as a freshman, it's going to be intimidating. You'll probably see a little bit more higher velocity on fastballs. You're going to see sharper breaking stuff. You're going to be expected to have to drop and block on sharper breaking stuff, on more changeups. So knowing the game's going to get sped up, knowing the level's going to take a step up, you can't be afraid to make a mistake. You might have been fine with a 1-knee setup on every single pitch in high school. Well, there might be one pitcher that's got a gross wipeout sweeper that you just can't get around and block that pitch. So you might have to adjust. Talk to your upperclassmen, talk to your coach, watch the highest level guys do it, because not being afraid to fail is only going to open up those avenues for you for playing time and for success for that first year spring and going forward in your career. Because like I talked about at the beginning, you want to know your skill set. So you want to know your strengths and weaknesses. If you're afraid to ever touch your weaknesses, they're going to stay down there and you're never going to get to that max ceiling that you want to get to. So it's like knowing those and not being afraid to fail as you're trying to work and get better at those, and talking to your coaches and upperclassmen to get ideas of how to get better at those. The last piece of advice I'd give for young freshmen is get to know your pitchers as good as you can. So we'll get into it more, talking recruiting and whatnot. But I want my freshman catchers right away to not be afraid. You're a leader. You have to be a leader on the defense. You're communicating almost all the cut plays. You have the ball in your hand every time. You're making a lot of decisions. You're the leader of the defense. So you have to know pitchers probably the other most important position. So it's like if they don't have trust and confidence in you, then it's going to make it very hard for them to have success, for you to have success, and ultimately for the team to have success. So talking to them right away, and it's simple conversations. It's like before a bullpen, hey, what is your best strikeout pitch? Simple question. What's your best strikeout pitch? Okay, let's dive into it a little bit more. When you're behind in the count, when you're 2-1, what's your best off-speed pitch that you feel comfortable throwing for a strike, right? Okay, now we can get a little bit more in depth. You've built some rapport with the guy. All right, we got a left-handed hitter up. He's a 6-hole hitter. There's nobody on base. Take me through a sequence that works for you as a pitcher, how you would pitch that guy. So that's just like, one, it's helping you out because if you get a call pitches or you just know how hitters are going to react to pitches, you know what your pitcher wants to throw. Two, it's helping you to understand them. It's helping them to have trust and confidence in you. As a pitcher, if I had a catcher that was just kind of like, all right, I got this dialed in. I'm going to make all the calls here. Like, it's a little bit harder to have full trust in that guy because you didn't ask me what I'm good at. You didn't ask me what I'm bad at. So building that rapport with your whole pitching staff as a young kid, as a young freshman on campus is going to be huge for you because you're going to learn the game. You're going to learn your staff more. But then, two, it's going to build that rapport with your whole staff and just make things easier down the road.
Yeah, like what you just said there, that reminded me of when I was a freshman or a sophomore and kind of like how you get really nervous at first just because, of course, right, like you said before, you want to receive every ball and make everything look like a strike. You want to block every single ball. You want to make every throw on the bag, right?
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, you think about it like pitchers, I feel like their outings are more important, maybe isn't the way to say it, but it's like you think about it, all your pitchers, I mean, you're not throwing every single scrimmage, right? Like for them, their opportunities come a lot. There's a lot fewer of them than there might be for you as a catcher. And it's like, okay, so thinking about how you can help your pitcher succeed, and it's just something simple like what you said, just get on the same page and figure out what they're confident throwing, right? Because no matter how much as a catcher, if you believe you have pitch calling, like, I know what we're doing, we're going to do this. At the end of the day, the pitcher's the guy throwing the ball, right? He's got to be confident in what he's throwing. So even if you still end up agreeing on like maybe your choices are right, you at least want the pitcher to like have confidence in what you're doing there.
Absolutely. Yeah. And my last point on that is I think majority of the people that are going to be listening to this know both of us. But if you don't, I coach against Sam in the same college conference. And this is a point for recruits, and this is a point for young catchers. As I go to a showcase or if I go to a game or as I'm scouting you, as we're about to play you in the spring, I look immediately at pitchers' body language throughout their bullpen, throughout their first couple innings of pitches, because you can tell how much confidence a pitcher has in their catcher just based on body language, based on conversations in the dugout between innings, based on conversations after the bullpen. So for us as hitters, it's really tough facing Gustavus pitchers because they all freaking trust Sammy a ton. And I can tell that right away. It's like they trust they can get their fastball to all four quadrants. They can spike a pitch whenever they want because they know it's getting blocked. And the last piece of that is like they have confidence when guys get on base too, because it's like Sammy's going to get me in a good spot and he's got a hose of an arm. So it's like I got to focus on this guy, but it gives me confidence that I don't have to freak out about this base runner and take away from my pitch execution because my catcher's got my back. So as young catchers, understanding that, it's like getting that pitcher's confidence with you. And then telling them it's like a pitcher is going to get sped up. Like, you know, that's going to happen throughout a game, throughout a week, throughout a series. So it's like, no, what are they not confident in? Is it their slider? Is it their changeup? Is it picking to second base on a spin pick move? And then it's your job to make them confident during that time. So it's like right after their bullpen, just be like, yep, slider had great spin today. Let's trust that pitch early and often. I'm going to be putting it down there. Coach is going to be putting it down there. I'm going to be blocking everything with 2 strikes, and I'm going to be framing everything at the bottom of the zone. So have trust, have confidence in that pitch because you can see it. I can see how much the Gustavus pitchers trust you catching, and it just makes them that much better on the mound.
Oh, I appreciate that, Hope. It's
Of course.
but I see what you mean. It's the subtle things that as a catcher you might not expect that like really impact how your pitchers just feel on the mound, right? Because of course, like pitchers depends on the guy, right? Some of them are really even keel, right? And they might, like we were talking about earlier, they have that control of their mental state. Like they can go out there, they look what you put down and they just throw it. But there's going to be other guys who they spin the wheels more. And that leads into my next question, which is like you yourself as a pitcher, having experienced it on the mound and also having coached kids now, if you were to help your catchers understand, like when you go out for that mound meeting, like what should you tell your pitcher? Like, let's start with the guy who gets amped up, right? And is like, oh, like you can see it on their face, right? They're kind of freaking out. They're not throwing strikes. Like, what would you have your catchers go tell them to like help them calm down a little bit?
Great question. And it's really a question I contemplate a lot because my brain does the same process when I go out there for a coaching visit. What I like if a catcher has that dialed in and has that rapport with the pitcher, it's better to have just your catcher go talk to the pitcher because for whatever reason, it's just the human nature. When coach walks out there and most of the time the infield comes in, it's going to put more pressure and it's going to speed things up for that pitcher. So that's why I love having confident catchers that know what they're doing and know how to handle these situations because then they can quick run out there. The infield can stay at their positions. The pitchers don't. In my opinion, when I was bad as a pitcher and when I see pitchers getting sped up and losing command of the zone or getting too amped up, it's because they feel like all eyes are on me and I have too much pressure. So it's like I have to execute this pitch. So sometimes having coach go out there, having the whole infield come in just makes that situation worse. So if you're a catcher and you have that rapport and you know when your pitcher gets sped up, like you said in this situation, get out there and talk to him right away. What I would do is know what your end goal is. So in this situation, you got a pitcher that's amped up. That's just a little bit too fired up. We got to calm him down, got to get him back in the zone. We're going to assume he probably walked, gave up a hit, maybe beaned the guy, so there's a guy or two on base. Here's how I would attack it as a catcher. Go out there right away, just be like, hey, forget about those guys. You're out of the stretch. Be good with your looks, but I got you. I'm going to throw those guys out. You don't need to worry about those runners. I got your back on those runners. Change your looks, whatever coach calls or whatever shortstop calls, whatever looks I give you. If there's a guy on second, do that, but I'm going to have your back. Then I like to go to of like, hey, most of the time, like in this amped up situation, they haven't given up 4 straight barreled hits to the wall. Like a lot of times, like maybe a hit or two mixed in, but it's like you walk the guy, you beam the guy. So then it's giving him confidence back in his stuff and back in his pitches. And just like, hey, your stuff is on today. Let's get you back in the zone. They're not going to hit you. Then I kind of like to look at a hitter coming up. So then it's like, all right, what's the game situation? How many outs do we got? Where are the runners at? I look at that hitter, see if it's a lefty or righty, and then it's just continue to pump their tires, continue to build confidence. You look and just be like, this is your guy right here, right? Like you can get this guy out. I know you can get this guy out. He's your guy. What pitch you want to go first pitch? What do you got confidence in here? And then letting that pitcher of like pump their tires, pump their tires, pump their tires, but then they calm down and they take a little bit of ownership, and then they need to be able to pump their own tires to have success. So then you ask them, what pitch are you fully confident in here to get ahead strike one on this guy? Pitcher has to make that decision. Yep, I'm confident with my heater. Okay, then you just subconsciously have made that pitcher make them be positive in their own head. Because a lot of the times, I'm sure what their internal thoughts are is like, shit, I can't throw a ball here. Or I don't want to walk this guy. Or I got to finish this pitch. Like, there's so many negative thoughts. There's so many thoughts that can come in your head. Really watch the individual details of what you tell the guy isn't as important. It's the tone and the confidence building and just the ability to show him like, I'm going to have your back. The defense is going to have your back and make the play. And you're a good pitcher. So let's execute this next pitch and let's get this next batter out.
That fires me.
My question for you: What do you like to tell your college guys? Like you're going out there, Brevin's on the bump. You walk the leadoff guy. You got to calm him down. What are you telling them?
Yeah. So what I like to think about is I've realized that because I've done it wrong and I've done it right, and what I've noticed is that I always try to do the opposite of whatever the pitcher out there, wherever his head's at. So like there's
Yep.
some guys on the pitching staff who, when they walk the leadoff guy and, you know, they see a guy run down to the bullpen, like their body language as I call time and I walk out there, you can see they're like looking around. They don't want to make eye contact with you. They don't want to look at the coaches. It's like you
Yep.
can see
Yep.
the wheels spinning. So like, and if their body language is like bad, they're like, man, they're just like, oh, I don't know why I can't. Like then I just kind of like, hey, like lock it in. Like especially if that guy does, they've all got the dog in them, but like some of
Yep.
them can like really turn compete mode on. And if it seems like their compete mode is off and they're just like freaking out, sometimes I just say, hey, like, let's go. You
Yep.
got this. Like, so that's one tone I use. But then there's just like you said, like sometimes it's not a lack of compete. It's just they don't believe in their stuff. And like,
Yep.
that's when I do what you said is just like, hey, like, you got this. Especially if it's true. It's like, yeah, you're throwing a hammer slider right now. That guy stuck his bat out and he hit it, poked it into right field. Like, that's out of your control. So just
Yep.
keep doing it. And but what I think what you said is money, because it's like at the end of the day, everything in that pitcher's environment when they're struggling is telling them, hey, you're not doing a good job, at least in the, you know, in the pitcher's mind. So like when you go out
Mhm.
there and talk to them, you kind of just got to hit the reset button. And that reset button is just giving them that jolt of confidence. Like, hey, dude, snap out of it. You got it. We're going to do this and
Yep.
we're going to do it with your best pitch. But sorry, that was a long winded answer, but like,
No,
just
that's money. And,
like,
and it goes right back to our point of like what we've been talking about of the best catchers understand their pitching staff individually. It makes those meetings a lot easier. Like if you've built that trust up, like if it's a guy you're really tight with and like you can tell he's sped up mentally. And that's what we've been more talking about, the sped up mentally guys. You can go out there and crack a joke right away for him. So then it's just kind of like, find an easy knock joke, find a just stupid funny joke that's just kind of like, whoa, I didn't expect that to happen. And that's all it is. It's just kind of like there's some times when if you get sped up, you're just making it too serious. And it's just kind of like, obviously we all take it very seriously. We all want to be as good as we possibly can at this. But if it gets too serious and you're thinking too much about other stuff, then it's like sometimes you just need that mental reset. But no, you're spot on about the guys that sometimes just need a little kick in the butt. And that goes back to like when I noticed when we had classes on game days, on spring break, we don't have classes during the day. When we have classes, especially for college athletes as a catcher, it's not the pros where you show up and your job is play baseball. Get your body ready, get nutrition that's provided for you, get a workout in that's provided for you, get your catch play in, and then this is your job to make pitches. College athletes and college baseball players and high school players, you're doing more than just baseball for every point in your life. So there's going to be times where like you're in a different spot physically, you're in a different spot mentally. And there's sometimes where you're just not focused. And then from a catcher, from a coach, it's like, hey, lock it in. Like, I know what your focus can be. You're not fully dialed in here. Lock it in. And that's kind of the easiest part. I think more pitchers get sped up at this age level, but there handful that need a little bit of like, hey, dude, like get a little more focus.
yeah. Yeah. It's a really interesting because I noticed that just this last year, really. I just never put the pieces together because I was always like, well, okay, I should just have the same kind of spiel. I go out there and like, hey, man, you got this. But like you said, as you learn your pitching staff more, and that goes back to why it's so important that you, at the very least, like have conversations with your pitchers to show them that you care about like their success, that you genuinely want them to pitch well. So then you kind of build this trust and this relationship so that you can go out there and say, hey, dude, like lock it in, right? If you need to, right?
Yes.
And it's have and feel, but I'm sure that feel just comes with experience. And yeah, it's important.
Yeah. So for you as a catcher, and this for all catchers, how you build rapport with the pitching staff. And my dad always used to tell me this when you're trying to pump somebody up, but knowing there's going to be times where you have to be constructive with them. It's like a piggy bank, right? So pumping a guy up, you need to start putting pennies. You need to start putting nickels. Put a couple dimes in your pitcher's piggy bank. So that's at practice, you play catch with them or you're throwing a bullpen and just like, wow, like your fastball command on the outside pitch was dialed in today, right? That's putting a couple nickels in the piggy bank. Or after they have an awesome outing on Sunday, you see him in the cafeteria Monday, or you see him in the weight room and just be like, dang, dude, like you were dialed in. What pitches were you throwing? Like, how were you feeling out there? You're putting nickels, you're putting dimes in the piggy bank, you're pumping guys up, you're building that rapport. So when it comes a time where your pitcher loses focus or he's messing around up there and he's worried about what the umpire's calling, or he's worried about what the hitters are doing in the box. They're getting up on the plate. They're leaning in. Umpire's making bad calls. Then you built his piggy bank up. You need to be like, hey, dude, no, I don't care what the umpire's doing. I don't care what the hitter's doing. You're too good of a pitcher to let that stuff affect you. You need to dial it in. Well, that's probably taking a quarter out of the piggy bank. But when you have it built up and you have that rapport, then when you need to be constructive and get on a guy, they're going to listen to you because they know you care about them, right? Just like you've talked about. But if you never have those combos and they don't think you care and you don't care, then like when it comes crunch time in game and you need a guy to make a big pitch to a big hitter, you might not be able to calm them down or get them in the right spot to be able to do that.
Yeah. And like, I think this gets into a really interesting conversation because like you were talking about, there's a lot of different ways. Sometimes it's in the weight room. It'll be in the cafeteria. It's when you guys are at a like team party on a Saturday night, right? Just like,
yep.
And honestly, and I mean, I think that's what's really interesting for, every catcher is going to be different in how they go about their business. But for some pitchers that you have, I'm sure you've known many different pitchers with many different, honestly, work ethics or ways of training and how they just go about their daily lives in school. And I think like, for example, if you aren't a guy who parties, like I personally, I don't party that much, but when it comes to something like a lot of the pitchers, they hang out together a lot, right? And they go to the team house and it's even things like that where like, if you go just spend time with them outside of the game, right? Show that it's like, it's not just, I see you at the field, I say good job, and then I see you again for your bullpen in 3 days, 4 days. Like just little things like that. And I mean, that's a question I want to ask you is like, when you think about your favorite catcher that you've ever thrown to, like, were you friends with them off the field, like a lot, or just, and you don't have to be specific if you don't want to, but just curious, like what was that relationship like?
Yeah, no, that's a really, really good question. I've been lucky. I've had a lot of good catchers, so it's a tough question. What I would say, and I might have a little bit more of a unique answer. The best catcher I've ever thrown to was Alonzo Rubalcaba was his name. I played with him in Waterloo, Iowa, 2019 summer. So a little bit not how you would traditionally think of, like, we weren't college teammates. So it's like, you don't have that time. You don't have that cafeteria. You don't have those workouts. You don't have hanging out in the dorm or apartments or houses to build that rapport. So going in, I was just kind of like, most of the time in the summer setup, it's like quick 5-minute convo with the catcher. Hey, what's your best stuff? What do you sequence well? All right, let's go get it done. It's kind of what your typical conversation was from a catcher, because it's like, he's got 20 different guys from 20 different schools, so it's tough for them to manage. What Zoe did so well is just what we've been talking about here the last 15, 20 minutes. It's like, he wanted to know as much about me as possible. So I remember day one, we just had to practice. It was 2 or 3 days before the Northwood season started. So we had a light practice. There was only like 8 or 9 guys had reported. And then he's just like, hey, let's walk over to the local Euro shop after practice. Like, let's just walk over there and let's chat. Well, we ended up, it went from, hey, let's go get a 20-minute lunch because we're hungry, to a 3-hour conversation about our baseball backgrounds, our life backgrounds, what our families are up to, all of that stuff. And right away, as a pitcher, I was just kind of like, I haven't even seen this kid catch yet, but I already know I'm going to like throwing to him, because it's like, he's already starting to understand how I'm wired as a person. And a lot of times that's how you compete as an athlete as well on the mound. So then we get to the actual games, and he was the most just like calming presence out there. And it was a transition period for me. It's hard for him, like we've talked about, of like, guys are at fully different schools. So I was coming off a average to below average junior year season for what I wanted to get done, from a innings pitched, from an ERA, from a strikeouts, walks, from a numbers standpoint. I had all these goal stuff I wanted to work on. And that was like his first question to me. So I was thinking selfishly at this time, he's thinking he could easily do that too. We're in a summer league, guys from all over the country. You're the only kid from your school. Like, most guys, it's easy to think selfishly. What can I do to get my skills better for when I go back to college? He immediately asked me, he's like, what are your goals this summer? And I started telling him, like, I want to develop my slider. And then he's like, well, what are your goals like for baseball, and then for school, and then for life past that? So it ended up just being a candid conversation that built so much trust. So then once we got to the game, I was just kind of like, all right, this guy's already talked to me about. So then we got into the nitty gritty details, and I was like, I need to be able to locate my slider on hitters' fastball counts. So why I loved him the most in college, majority of college coaches will call the pitches for you. So your catcher isn't calling pitches. In summer ball, 98% of the time, catchers just call the pitches. So he had asked me, what are your goals? I wanted to be able to throw sliders in 0-0, 1-0, 2-1, 3-0, 3-1 counts. Like, that's what I wanted to be able to do. In my mind, it's what I thought was going to make me successful this summer and going forward. And he's like, well, then let's get that done. So right after the bullpen, I remember he's like, geez, your slider is sharp today. Was it? I don't know. It was probably average. But he told me it was really sharp. It just built that confidence in my head. He put a quarter in my piggy bank. So then when I go out there and it's 2-1 and there's runners at second and third and it's a one-run ball game, I don't revert back to, okay, I just got to groove a fastball down the middle. Alonso's given me all this confidence. I can rip this slider 2-1, trust it. Guy's going to be out front. He's going to ground out. I'm going to get out of this inning. And it ended up being probably my best individual performance of a season as a pitcher. And I think he caught probably 95% of the innings. He ended up going to Kentucky after that and then is in the Tigers organization. So it works out. But he was a junior college kid. He was 5'9.5", $175. So like coming out of high school, he didn't have written on his prospect sheet, hey, this guy's going to be a minor league catcher. But he did all those small things. He built the confidence. He had a really strong arm. He knew so then I asked him, it's like, what do you want to work on? He's like, I want to be able to back pick to any base in any situation that's a good situation to back pick. And I was like, heck yeah, I love that too. So then we talked through it, and it's like, you're down one with the 9-hole hitter up, runner on third base, and he's a righty, 0-2 count. Probably not the best time to throw a back pick to third base, right? Like you could know some of that stuff, but there's nobody on. It's early in the game. 3-hole hitters up. You got 2 outs. You got a guy on first base taking a lazy secondary, not hustling back. That's a perfect time to back pick. It's a low risk, high reward. You got a good hitter up. He's got a good chance of getting a hit. You got a lazy base runner. Now's our time to take a chance. So I think he back picked like 4 guys at first base that summer. When I was on the mound, I think he back picked 1, if not 2 at second base. So it's like that all together. It's like, usually you ask what the other person's goal is. What do they want to get accomplished? They ask you, you combine those, you do it together, everybody has success. So it's like that's why they call it the true battery. Like if one piece of it, if the negative or the positive is way off kilter, it's not going to work out.
That's sick. Yeah. Like just that paints such a great picture. I think it's really easy to see and understand. Like you got to care about them as a person. Right. And it sounds like that's what a lot of this is he showed that he cared about you as a person and likewise you to him. And you can see that you both have your own goals in this, but you're helping each other achieve those at the same time. And like, it's great things happen. You guys had success, both of you that summer because of that.
Mm-hmm. For sure. The last piece, he would drop and block everything in a bullpen setting. So it's like, that also just adds confidence. Like you do still need the skills, and he had those, and the one he didn't was being able to back pick. So then he worked on that as well. So you need the physical skills, but like you could have every physical skill, but if the pitcher doesn't trust you, it's going to make life very difficult. So that's why I like kind of focusing on those intangibles that like you can improve on. And that's why I like the catching position in general. There's some positions that are harder to improve upon, right? Like if you're an outfielder, you probably can only gain so much speed on an off-season sprinting acceleration program. Like there's some tools that become limited. As a catcher, like, yes, your arm strength, but you can do drill work. You can throw plyos, underweight, overweight balls to get your arm strength better. For sure, you can work. Your transfer can always get better. Your feet can always get better. Your hips, your movement can always get better. So it's like, that's the cool thing about catching is like, you're not stuck at this level when you come in. If you're a high school kid coming into a college team, or you're a college kid getting drafted or going to play in a summer league, it's like you're not limited at this level. There's so many intricacies to catching, And we haven't even really talked a lot about hitting, because there's obviously multiple that plays into being a good catcher too. But like, there's so many more intricacies that you can improve upon and get to just a high level as a catcher, which makes it awesome, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. There's so many little things, whether it's with receiving, like the different styles that you can take, the different approaches you can take, especially nowadays, it seems like.
Yeah.
Like that's what I always tell the guys that I've been working with this summer is when it comes to becoming a really good mechanical, like defensive catcher, the great thing is that a lot of it is just practicing the same little things over and over and over again, right? Like if you want to get better at receiving an outside slider, right? Like you can practice that over and over and over again. And the great thing is, unlike hitting, you know when that pitch is coming, right? Like you can kind of expect when it's going to happen. So I feel like that makes your training as a catcher, it's even more game-like without even really trying to make it. It's just like an outside heater, you know when your pitcher's trying to throw it there. And granted, pitchers miss, right? But that's just, if you can get really good at doing it when you want to, I think that it's still just going to raise, like, even when you're set up inside and they miss way over here. Like, in that way, I think improving as a catcher is one of the easier things to do on the baseball field.
But you're spot on. You're spot on. And it's like any skill you want to improve, you need reps, and you need intentful reps. It's hard as a pitcher because you can only throw so many balls at full intent before you're shut down for the day and you can't carry those throws. As a catcher, and this goes back to like what I look for as a coach recruiting guys and as I'm scouting guys, it's like, how much do they care? On top of how much they care, it's like, does every pitch matter to them? Are they framing? Are they moving their body late? Are they getting set up? Are they sticking every single pitch in that bullpen setting? Or 1 in 3 fastballs, if a pitcher misses a spot a little bit, are they just letting their glove drag out of the zone? Are they not working hard to beat that pitch to the low spot, get their glove there, frame it up because it's just the bullpen setting? So he's just throwing that loopy curveball, just catch it coming down like this. So there's always an intent to have, and that's the cool thing about catching is like you have the opportunity to have the most intentful reps. Now you just got to make them worthwhile, because you can catch 300 pitches of a bullpen and get nothing out of it if it's just kind of like, just receive. Or you can get 300 really high quality framing, receiving, blocking reps. So it's really, you got to care as a college baseball player. It's even to a heightened level as a catcher, I think, because it's more of a physical toll completely overall than any other position.
That makes sense. And I think it's a really important thing for high school catchers to understand, or just people who are going to catch in college to understand, is like definitely on a daily basis. I wonder if it's the same way at Carleton, right? Like this was the first week of practice and I remember when I was a freshman, but it's interesting seeing our freshman catchers now. You know, you got to get used to at practice, you're usually staying for an extra hour or so if you have bullpens, or you're just catching 5 bullpens a day. And it can get to be a lot. And I just think that that's part of the benefit of if you train a lot or you receive a lot, you block a lot, you throw a lot. I feel like that definitely prepares you for, when you're a part of a college baseball team, there can be a lot expected of the catchers. And like you were saying before, coaches have different ways of doing things, but that's definitely a good thing to know too when you're choosing a school. I feel like does this program really care about how they develop their catchers?
Yes, 100%. Well, I'll tell you straight up, why catchers are the toughest guys I've ever been around. And so Carleton is a more unique school. Like I said, we have 3 trimester system. So a lot of our juniors will go and study abroad first trimester, which goes till about Thanksgiving. So as baseball coach, it's good. Like I want them. It's an amazing experience. You get to spend full 4 months with some of your best friends in an awesome different part of the country. So we had guys in East Tanzania. We had guys in London. Majority of our guys were in Barcelona and Spain last year. So with that, year 1, I got the job in the winter, so we didn't have a true fall ball. So going into year 2, I have all these plans, pitcher development plans, bullpens, inter squads, World Series games. Well, then 7 of our guys went and studied abroad, 2 of our catchers. So we had 1 full-time catcher and then 1 kid that was fighting to be in our rotation as a pitcher, had pitched innings out of the bullpen for us last year and had done some catching in college or in high school. So he was a good catcher, but we wanted to develop him into one of our starting arms, but he had to catch all fall. So like poor John, I mean, he's the toughest guy ever, and he got a lot better from it, but he caught 80% of the bullpens and the live ABs and everything else. So it's like, I feel better this year. We got 4 or 5 catchers that'll be available for fall ball, which is going to be really nice. But there's situations where it's like, or, hey, this guy just jammed his thumb. He's out for a week. You got to catch all 10 midweek bullpens today. Like it's a grind position, but like we've continued, your coaches see that, and more importantly, your teammates see how much of a grind it is. So when they see how much you care, when a pitcher says, hey, can you catch an extra 12 short box for me? And you're like, yep, let's get her done. Let's go. Let's get after it. Or you're, oh, yeah, my knees are really sore. My arm's dragging. Like, that is direct feedback right to your guys that, like, I do care or I don't care. And it goes like, how you do one thing is going to be how you do everything. So it's like, if you don't take every single pitch in the bullpen intentfully trying to work on something, if you don't put in a little bit of extra time before practice, if you don't stay after to catch pitchers after practice, you just probably won't get to your peak level of baseball that you could potentially get to. So yes, spot on from what you said. And that's the way to kind of think about it.
One thing that you just said about how, like, reaching your full potential, right?
Yep.
What I want to ask you, because you played at DMAC, right?
Yep.
So being at DMAC and now coaching at a D3 school, what advice would you give? Because I know I've talked to some guys this past year who are trying to decide whether they want to go to a 4-year like a D3 school or even a D2 school, or should they try to go the junior college route. So what advice would you give to those guys who aren't sure whether to go to JUCO or to a 4-year?
That's a great question. And yeah, it's a tough question too. Cool thing for me, I played at DMAC, so junior college, played at North Dakota State, graduated from there, and then I played 1 year of grad school at Concordia St. Paul, and now I'm coaching at Carleton. So I've played junior college D1, D2, coaching D3. I got to somehow figure out a way to get some NAIA action in there to get fully well versed in the college landscape. But no, it's a really tough question. Here's what I would say. Junior college route, you have to absolutely love baseball. Like it's at all levels, you have to love the sport you're going into. Junior college route, it's almost got to be to a heightened level, because time your college is going to be in a random town, so there's not going to be your typical college experience that you have going on. Most of the times you're going to have worse facilities, worse equipment, smaller budgets. So it's like, you're not going to have brand new sick Evo Shield stuff. You're not going to have a nice turf field. You're not going to have some of these nicer stuff. So, and then your road trips, your travel, it's a lot of buses, and depending on the area, a little bit more travel as well for that. So I would say it's like, one, what are you looking for out of school? For me, I knew I wanted to kind of stay in sports / the business world, econ, finance world, but I really had a tough time narrowing down exactly what I wanted to do major-wise. So for me, and I was contemplating football out of high school, baseball, so I was kind of a later decision maker. For me, it was nice in the fact of, like, I can use junior college, get a 2-year AA liberal arts degree, take classes in the business field that I think I'm interested in, but not be fully committed to a major before I go to a 4-year school. So for me, if you have a little uncertainty academics wise, like, that can be a nice piece of it. But the 2-year school is tougher. I mean, like, just the relationships piece of it. All of my junior college teammates that I spent 2 years with, I wish I could have spent 4 years with them. All of my North Dakota State teammates that I spent 2 years with, I wish it could have been 4 years. All of my Concordia St. Paul teammates that I only got 9 months with, I wish it could have been 4 years. So, like, the relationship piece of it makes it a little bit harder. Like, if you're a guy that's like, I want a really good friend circle right away, and I want to make lifelong best friends, like, and you know what you want to do major-wise academically, 4-year school might be down your path. But then it's also having just an honest look about what you want to do with baseball and kind of what level you want to get to. Having coached and played at every level, the discrepancy of talent is a lot smaller than people think. A lot smaller. And I think a lot of high school kids don't realize how high level every single level of college baseball is too. So understanding that is like, there might be a couple schools where you think like, hey, I could show up and be a freshman starter. Well, if that's something that you really want to do, you want to earn playing time as a freshman, you got to look at all the guys on their current roster. You got to look at the level of the league and have an honest assessment of yourself of like, am I good enough to start for playing time at this 4-year school, or am I not? Because if you're not, and you want, this is my dream school, I want to eventually be a starter here, then junior college might be a better route. For me, I wanted to get to the highest level pitching possible that I could. Unique thing that I don't know if I told you, I went to DMAC as a catcher and a pitcher. So I was a two-way. Really? Yes, I caught all through high school. I thought I was going to be a college catcher my whole life. That's another thing for junior college, I would say, is like if you have position versatility, like if you've been a pitcher, you've been a two-way outfielder, and you really want to just focus on one and dial in on one, junior college can be that route if you feel like you have a lot of development to get. At the end of the day, like how I think about things is like, go where you're wanted. Go where you and the coach have a shared vision of like, hey, here's what I want to be in 6 months. Here's what I want to be next year. Here's what I want to do when I graduate from college. You don't got to have a dialed in 40-year plan, but it's like, here's the direction in life that I want to go in. I want to be successful. Is your coach going to give you tools, put you in the right spots, surround yourself with teammates, with support systems that are going to allow you to do that? Most importantly is like, talk to the guys on the team. They like, you're in it right now. You're going to spend 90% of your time when you're not sleeping or in class with your teammates, right? So it's like, those guys are going to be your best friends in college, and most of the time, and hopefully they're your lifelong best friends past that as well. So it's a hard question because there's so many factors that go into making a college decision. I'd put your most important factors right away. It's location of the school, size of classes, competition level from a baseball standpoint, development from a baseball standpoint. Okay, do I want to go play pro baseball after playing at this college? Well, take a look through. How many pro guys has that college sent out? Like, is it one? Well, then it's a pretty low chance. Is it 13 guys over the last 30 years? Then it's a legitimate chance. Are your college guys getting guys placed in Northwoods leagues? Are they doing stuff for you to support your goals? So really, like in life in general, but especially when making a college decision, it's what are your priorities? What are your goals? What coaches, what schools, what professors, and most importantly, what teammates are going to support you the most to get that done? So it's a tough question, and it's one that I talk to a lot of high school kids about, but always leaning back on the people that you know care about you. And that's kind of been the sentiment of this convo. It's like talking to your parents, talking to your siblings, talking to your best friends, talking to your high school coaches. The people that really do care about you can give you a little bit different perspective, or they can support your perspective. But it's like, those are the people you want to go to help you make that decision as well. But there's never too many questions to ask, I would say, to just get as good of a feel as possible.
I think what you said there about how you need to be able to trust someone around you to just kind of give you a different perspective, maybe, or to, like you said, endorse the way that you're thinking about it. Because like on top of that, the idea of, I think a lot of times it can be easy to just only see like, all right, I want to play, right? I want to start right away. That's all I care about, right? And certainly if that really truly is what you just care about, like you only care about the baseball, then granted, for sure, you're probably going to weigh those things more importantly than maybe where the school is. Or like you were saying with junior college, right? You got to accept some of those things that you might get in a normal college experience. If you just go to the U of M, right? You might not get at junior college, and that's fine. But if you understand, like digging deeper, that's what I loved about what you just said. Like you got to dig deeper. Do you want to play summer ball? Right. And then what do the coaches do to help you get into summer ball? Or do you want, like, what kind of spring trips even do you go on? Like, are you going to have a spring break at all the next 4 years? If that's something you care about, like, do you have time to go abroad? I think that's also a question that gets brought up a lot. So just digging deeper and really asking, like, and talking to your parents and people who have experienced college before, college sports, like, what are some questions that you should maybe be thinking about on top of just, well, can I play baseball there? I think that can help like narrow down the decisions you're trying to make, like you were saying.
Correct. And it's not just like, for me, it was baseball and academics were really like the two main factors, with a portion of like location. So like for me, it was like, I thought like, unless a really cool down south academic baseball opportunity presented itself, I kind of wanted to stay in the Midwest. And like that was for me. Like my family's in Minnesota, my grandparents are in Minnesota. They wanted to come to a lot of games. So like nowadays there's live streams for everything. So that makes it pretty nice for family members if you don't care about going other places. But that's the conversations I have with guys all the time of, we've got California kids, we've got Texas kids, we've got Florida, we got New York. We got kids that I'm talking to and on our team from all over. So it's like, you got to know what you're okay with. Do you want to stay close to home, or are you okay with venturing out? Like, do you care about how big the city is, how easy it is to get around campus, or do you not care about a 25-minute walk across campus? Do you care about the weather in the winter? Us Midwest guys, it's like you got to be able to bundle up and walk to class a couple times a week, especially during December and January. So there's so many little factors, but it just goes back to, whenever you're making a hard decision in life, it's talk to the people that you trust and talk to the people that can get you in the right spot and the right ideas. And like with 4-year schools that I didn't touch on as much, and it's harder as a high school kid to think about, but then it's like, okay, what major am I going to choose? What's the successfulness of the school with that major? What's the connections that some of these guys have also made in that field? What's some job placement opportunities that guys have got? Because unfortunately, your baseball career will come to an end. Hopefully for a lot of guys, it's when you're 40 years old, right? But some guys, it's when you're 22 and when you graduate college. And at that time, you're going to need other skills and you're going to need other connections. So really accidentally, I didn't go into college with like, hey, I want to make a bunch of connections in the baseball world because I'm eventually going to be a baseball coach. Like that wasn't necessarily directly on my mind. I wanted to get as good as possible for me. I wanted to take care of my classwork, and I just wanted to be a good teammate and a good learner. Well, what happened for me was just kind of like throughout college, I was surrounded by really high-level coaches, really high-level professors, really high-level teammates, parents that are high-level business people or high-level whatever job they're doing. And then it's just like connecting, talking to them, building relationships with them. And they're the ones that became my support system and helped me get to where I'm at. So I figured out about halfway through, it's like, hey, I want to be a coach, a baseball coach. I think it's at the college level. I'm not sure what level I want it to be at. Well, let's pick my coach's brains. Like, let's meet with my pitching coach whenever he has downtime. Let's sit by our retired head coach from CSP on the bus ride back home so I can just pick his brain on his pitching stuff. So it's like, it goes back to knowing what your goals are, what your priorities are, and then surrounding yourself with the tools and, more importantly, the people that are going to lead you in the right direction to get there, I think.
Yeah. And this leads right into kind of where I wanted to get your input on, for guys who are older in college, right? And who maybe aren't sure like whether they want to work in baseball, right? Whether that's coaching or I'm sure there's a lot of different opportunities or training. Like there's a lot of different ways you can get into working in baseball. So what was your process like from when you graduated? Like, did you know kind of what you wanted to do, or what was that process like?
Great question. Candidly, no, I had no idea like exactly what I wanted to do, right? I did know, however, and it kind of started it started as a freshman in college, but it really came into fruition like my senior year. And then so my senior year of college was 2020. So it was that COVID shutdown year. Luckily for me, it was a tough time for a lot of people, obviously. For me, and there's bad stuff that happened, but I gained a lot of perspective out of that. And it was really kind of like what do I want out of baseball? What do I want out of life? And that kind of carried me right away as a freshman. I knew I wanted to stay in sports as long as possible. And then being a college baseball player, I was like, okay, well, my best likelihood is probably going to be baseball. So from the jump, I had my classes that like in college classes, you're not going to be directly like, hey, all right, we're learning infield, outfield shift processes of how we want to move guys around analytically and guys that pull it to their left side every time, right? Like you're not learning that in a college class. So I knew I was like, hey, I want to learn as much about the business world through college. I want to learn managing money, managing people, all of that kind of sense of just kind of like selling products, all of that. I wanted just a base layer of business knowledge. But then I knew it's like I want to make connections as well. So it's like that's what college is really cool for. It's just kind of like, okay, I want to be a college head coach. It's easy for me. I'm in this situation. I'm a college baseball player to talk to my coaches as much as possible and to talk to other coaches as much as possible. If you're in a different major, if you're a computer science major, it might be, hey, meeting, setting up, hey, with my professor, can we get coffee or can we go every office hours? I'm going to come in Wednesday and just talk about what you did before you were a professor in the computer science world. So it's understanding that and going off of that. I think for me, I'm trying to think exactly how to word this. Yes, I think for me, knowing what you're going to get out of college, but then knowing what your end goals were. So for me, it was like, I need to know to set myself apart, like how you get a job or how you get elevated in a job is setting yourself apart from the other people that are doing that, right? So if you're working a 9 to 5, you're a pizza delivery guy and you deliver the same amount of pizzas as every other guy, and then you come to your boss at the end of 3 months, you're like, I need a promotion. I need to get paid extra. Your boss is going to be like, well, are you delivering more pizzas than everybody else or not? And if you aren't, you don't get that promotion. So just like in life, for me, it was like, okay, I'm a college baseball player. There's a lot of college baseball players. What do I need to do to learn? Now I want to be a coach. So it started with like, just watching, following Instagram accounts, watching YouTube videos online, learning, watching lifting protocols, watching nutrition videos, like the whole broad spectrum of what it takes to be a really good baseball player. I knew I was like, if I want to be a trainer or coach, I got to be able to explain this to guys. So it was cool for me because it helps. It's like, it's going to help my current career, having more info on nutrition, on lifting, on plyo balls, on hitting mechanics, on the whole broad spectrum. But also, like, these are the skills and these are the teachings that I need to be able to know and teach others to get to my highest level of coaching possible. So it's finding those skills that whatever you want to do, set yourself apart in that industry. Try and develop some of those skills. A lot of this stuff is like, you will learn a majority of stuff on the job, on a lot of jobs that you're going to do. Unless you're a doctor, dentist, surgeon, like there's an exact way to do that, right? And you got to know that from school. A lot of jobs nowadays is like, you learn on the job. Do you have a skill set that sets you apart coming in? That's how you get hired. And can you communicate? Can you connect with people? It's just like, that's the world that we're living in. So it's like, I can have all the knowledge in the world, but if I can't explain that to you, I'm worthless in a business setting that's trying to teach people, right? So it's like, I can try and throw 100 miles an hour, but if I can't teach a guy how to hip hinge and get from 78 to 82 miles an hour, I'll never be a good coach. So understanding kind of what you want out of it and figuring out a couple ways to set yourself apart in that industry. And then looking at the highest level people, I luckily had Division I coaches, high level junior college coaches, high level Division II coaches that I could just ask questions from, that like they'd been through the journey that I kind of wanted to go on. So it's like knowing mistakes, knowing stuff's going to come up on the path. The more questions you can ask the guys that have been through it is just going to better prepare you for that path and hopefully make it smoother sailing for you.
That makes sense. And like what I found really interesting about what you said, it's cool. I can't remember where I heard it, but I think it was one of the first presidents of the United States or something, or maybe it was Napoleon. He said how like his knowledge, he thinks of it in like a T. So it's like, this is like being the baseball coach, but then there's all this other stuff here that has to do with it. Like, okay, so if you want to be the best baseball coach you could be, right, you're probably going to want to think about the nutrition. You're going to want to think about the pitching and the stuff, of course, and the communication part of it and the strength training. It's like, there's so many different things that go into being good at like anything. And with baseball coaching, it sounds like, right? And it's like, that is, to me, from what you said, it sounds like that's what can really separate you, right? Is like, can you do all of those other things that the people, like ultimately the people that you're helping, the players, the like 20-year-old kids, like, can you help them with that stuff? And I think like the way you explain that, like, it's like, yeah, that rung a bell for me, because it's like the best coaches I've ever played with or played for, it's like, yeah, you can tell that they don't just like write the lineup, right? They kind of, they have some feel and they know about all the other stuff. And that just like helps me as a player so much.
Yep. And like we've continued to talk about, from a player's perspective of just kind of like, in my opinion, and this is my baseball philosophy and my life philosophy, the only time you fail is if you don't learn from a mistake, right? So for me, and from what I tell all the players, that this is what I preach to all our guys. So as a coach, I have to emulate that same thing. And so the number one thing I learned right away was like, the more you know about something, the more you realize that you do not know about that topic, right? Like, it's like, I'm coming fresh out of college, grad school, and I'm like, yep, I'm right out of college baseball, was at a good program. I've been doing my individual research. Like, I know it all, right? Well, then I get there and it's like, oh gosh, like, yeah, I knew how to adjust my arm action for my 6'2" big frame that's not very mobile. But now I have a 6'3" lefty and he's not able to brace on his front leg. And it's something I've never thought about before. So it's like knowing that, like, the best thing I think in life is like making some of those mistakes and learning directly from them. Because then it's like, you want, like, when you make mistakes, it's because you're trying to be successful at something. So then it's like, it's only a failure if you make that mistake and you get nothing from that. So then you can never be successful in that endeavor. But it's like, you're moving in the right direction if you make the mistake because you want to accomplish this. And then this mistake tells you, nope, I need to tackle it this way instead this time, and forces you to try something else. And that's life in general. And that's what I got to constantly remind myself as a coach, of just kind of like, just like all of our players are not finished products, of like, I need to find a way to get better as a coach every single day. And like, that's what I preach to guys. So it's like, that's what I'm going to emulate as a coach. And a lot of it is just watching more baseball and just watching more reps. And just like anything, it's like, it's nothing crazy. I can't just take 30 years of knowledge from a 60-year coach that has 30 years of experience. I have to put in that time. I have to put in that reps. I have to watch game film. I have to go to games, like all encompassing stuff. But that's what makes life fun too. It's like, you have to enjoy the journey. Like, you want a destination, but if you get to your destination, you're just kind of like, oh, thank God, I'm done with the journey. Well, then it's like, you're probably in the wrong spot. Like, you have to enjoy the day-to-day of your journey throughout.
Yeah. And like, that reminds me of like that journey part of it. It's like, even today in practice, I was thinking just like how much more comfortable I feel doing our catcher throws. It's like little small stuff like that. And I'm thinking like, well, why is it that now as a junior, right? Of course, just having more experience, I think that's why I felt more comfortable. But it's like, no matter how hard I tried, I think as a freshman or a sophomore, to just like be like, yeah, like, I got this. Something, it feels like I still wouldn't have been that confident, if that makes sense. Like, it's like
you need the time and the reps and the journey. Yeah. Exactly. Like, you can't create like a confident college Sam catcher when you were 18 for your freshman year, because you hadn't caught hundreds of college innings, right? You hadn't caught 40 different types of college pitchers with different spin and different metrics and all that. So it's like, that's the piece as a young coach and as young athletes, you have to remind yourself of just kind of like, you have to get those reps and those experiences to be able to handle those situations. So it's like, you can never be a fully, and it'd be crazy if you came in as an 18-year-old freshman. You're like, yep, I'm fully comfortable doing everything. It's like, no, it's human nature. Like, you need to put in the work to then have confidence in your abilities doing that work. So for you, like, think about it. How much different is your perspective rolling into your first 2 days of college practice, and how you think about the game of baseball, and how you think about your goals, and how this spring is going to go, and what you want out of this year as a baseball player, compared to where is that your freshman year and where is that your sophomore year? I'm going to flip the interview a little bit. What have been your biggest perspective changes?
Yeah, that's a great question. Like, I was just thinking about this before we started practice. I think for me, especially because I got hurt last year, and going into the transition, right? Like, this is now my second half of college baseball. So what I noticed is that it's not that I don't care as much, but it's like, I'm not. Oh,
yeah.
Can you still hear me? I think I can hear you now.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you. All right, there you are.
Shit, yeah. Let me adjust my audio quick. There we go.
Sweet.
All right. Can you hear me? See me?
Yep.
God damn it, I can't hear you. One sec. All right, I think I'm working here.
Perfect.
Yep. All right, I got you.
All right.
God, we were on such a roll too.
I know, right?
My Wi-Fi. All right, I need your whole answer again. Biggest perspective change this year, rolling in first week of practice to sophomore, freshman year. I think I heard you as it was breaking up. I heard you saying you don't feel like you have to be perfect and you were trying a little bit too hard, I think, early in your career, but talk to me.
Yeah, exactly. When I look back on freshman and sophomore year, there's, of course, the high expectations, right? You want to perform well. And I think I've always like worked hard. Like I've always trained a lot
Yep.
and I've always just done that. And I think what I've learned now as a junior and as a senior, I think because like the end, at least of what's guaranteed, right? Of like playing, just playing baseball, like as for a normal season, there's 2 years left of that. And it's kind of made me realize like why I appreciate the game. And it's because of the guys I'm with, like you were talking about with the teammates you play with. I mean, they're just your boys. And so I'd say that's the biggest change that I've had, like now going into my last 2 years, is I just appreciate the game like for
Yep.
what it is. And I understand about myself that I want to be the best I can. And that hasn't changed for the since freshman and sophomore year, but there isn't the same
Yep.
pressure. And I think now looking back on it, the biggest difference is like I'd see like the anxiety I would have about performing well. And it's like, it's not a bad thing,
Yep.
right? It's just telling you care. But I think freshman and sophomore year, if this makes sense, like it was kind of the proof to me that that anxiety really does you no good. And it's like, especially when now there's only a few years left of guaranteed baseball, it's like, I'm just going to enjoy it. And you just kind of take it all in.
Yeah, no, that's a great answer. And like that's the toughest part about baseball, I think, is the performance anxiety and just like being able to perform piece of it in situations. What I always kind of lean back on is just kind of like anxiety is usually created in thinking too much about the future and stuff that can happen to you. So it's just kind of like that. Like when you think too.
Oh, I lost you. There we go.
All right.
Can you hear me? Good. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yep. Got you back.
There you go.
Okay. Good. You're moving around a little bit. You had a great answer. Did I cut off before I was talking?
Yeah. There we go.
Back.
All right. Sweet. Yeah.
We're going to stay good for the rest of this.
All right. I think so too. But yeah, I remember you were talking about how like the performance anxiety part of it.
1 second. I can't hear you.
Okay.
Talk one more time. Let me see if I can hear you here.
Can you hear me?
Yep. Okay. Got you.
All
right. We're going. No more technical difficulties. Rest of this. Great answer. Great answer by you is what I said. And it's really goes back to the piece of like, I know for a fact that you felt this, and I've seen a lot of college baseball players, high school baseball players feel this. You care so much about being really, really good and getting to your peak level. I think and hope for you from where you're sitting right now to when you stepped on campus your freshman year, you started to understand that like the process to being as good as you can be might not be what you thought it was, right? Like sometimes caring too much can be detrimental. And it's a hard thing to wrap your mind around, but I see it a lot in baseball. Like in football, if you're an offensive lineman and you miss a block, okay, you get to get pissed off and you get to just smash that guy the very next play, right? Like you can use that energy and direct it right into your next play. In baseball, if you swing and miss for strike 3, there's nothing you can do but sit, think, reset until your next at bat. Right. So it's just kind of like overthinking about it and trying too hard to be too good. Just like you said, is like sometimes can move you in the wrong direction. Now, and why I wanted to ask you that question is because you have great perspective on it. Now it's just kind of like you appreciate every day. Like you appreciate being at the yard. Like you appreciate being around your teammates. And when you go about it that way, it's like you're out there to have fun, to compete your tail off at all times, and just to be and make your teammates better. That is a little less internal focused. Sometimes some of that external focus of helping other guys out, seeing things for what it is, understanding why you're there, helps you have that success and helps you get to that really, really high level of baseball. Whereas like thinking too much internally, thinking about how to be perfect, sometimes can move you in the opposite direction. Because like I see it too much of like, you're an awesome kid. You have a sick friend group, good family, good friends, take care of schoolwork. Like you have a lot of stuff going on and you're really high level and you happen to be really good at baseball, right? Like it's okay to be frustrated about bad performances or stuff. But, yep. but it is not life or death, right? And that's kind of the final piece of it, of like, no matter you go 0 for, have the worst game of your life, or have the best game of your life, it's like your family, friends, loved ones, they still love you. You're still an awesome person. You just happen to be a really good base. Going to happen if we are too laser focused on those mistakes of like, I have to get this perfect before I'm ever going to get to where I want to be. Well, then it's just kind of like, hey, end destination, and your journey becomes very, very hard and arduous to get through. So it's like knowing all those failures are going to come throughout your journey, like having that perspective of just kind of like, I get to be here every day, not shit, I have to catch these 3 bullpens. It's like, I get to work with these pitchers. I get to catch these bullpens when there's other 20-year-old kids around the country, not to get too deep, but it's like there's other kids in other countries that are going to their military service right out of high school. Or there's other kids that don't have the opportunity to go to college and they're working a 40-hour shift on an assembly line in the canning company right out of high school. So there's so many different circumstances. So kind of just really understanding why you do it and understanding the bigger picture of it makes that journey and makes that day-to-day just phenomenal. I'll tell you, I have a quick snippet story, and I've been yapping a lot here, but I've got a quick story of its perspective. My senior year, I was at NDSU pre-COVID, and this is why I say COVID gave me a lot of perspective of why baseball was so special to me and why my teammates and why I just love sports in general. So senior year, I was at NDSU, and we flew to our first 4 or 5 away trips. Fast forward to my grad school year, we had 1 flight for a spring break trip. Everywhere else was bus. Bus to Wayne, Nebraska, bus to Sioux Falls, South Dakota, bus down all over Midwest, basically. There wasn't a single bus trip that I had my last year at Concordia that I wasn't just like, this is going to be awesome. And it was the weirdest change of thinking of like, I remember showing up to like a 7 a.m. bus to Wayne, Nebraska, going to an average baseball field in the middle of basically nowhere to me. But it's like, I get to play a weekend series, 3 baseball games with my best friends. Go back a little bit, why I have the perspective is like, this is sad to admit. Well, I'll admit it. We were flying to play the University of Hawaii in Honolulu, Hawaii, middle of February. It was like February 12th, 2019 winter. And myself, I'd just been in the Fargo cold all winter, practicing in a dome, throwing it up into a white dome for my long toss, throwing on rubber mounds with rubber turf shoes and getting pellets all over my socks. And I was going to the University of Hawaii to play a 4-game set against the University of Hawaii, and best part of the frickin' country, coolest part ever. And I was like, gosh, this 8-hour flight sucks. Like, what am I going to do on this flight to Hawaii before I get to spend a week on essentially vacation in Hawaii playing baseball with my best friends? I couldn't dream up. Like, you could ask me now, like, pick a vacation you want to go to, and it'd be like, well, if I was still playing baseball and my arm was in good shape, it'd be going on a college trip somewhere down south, somewhere warm to hang out with my guys for a full week. And my perspective was, oh my gosh, an 8-hour flight, this sucks. Like, my hips are going to be tight, like my back's going to be sore. Fast forward, I wish I would have known it sooner, but I eventually learned, and it was like every bus trip, there wasn't a single one where I wasn't just kind of like hopping on 6 a.m. with my coffee and like, it's going to be a great day. It's going to be a great weekend. So that's my perspective story for you, of just having a reason of why you're doing it. And it could be different reasons, but having that deep down reason of why you're doing it makes the world a difference.
That's awesome. Yeah. Like
Pause a second.
Okay.
I'm going to go off these. All right, talk. I think I should be able to hear you.
Okay. You hear me? You hear me?
Yep. Good now.
All right. Awesome. Yeah. Like that story's awesome, because I think you're right. And I had a similar feeling when we went to Wash U last year. Like,
yep.
Just thinking about how being able to travel across the country to like play baseball and basically have no other responsibility other than to put your cleats on, put your gear on and play. It's so sick. And thinking about college baseball. Oh, can you still hear me?
I apologize. We're back. I had that first part.
Okay, sweet.
Yep.
Yeah, so just that, I remember feeling something similar when we went to Wash U in St. Louis. I feel like those big, long trips, it's like you kind of realize it's just so fun that you get to go with your buddies and play baseball and have everything else really taken care of for you. And can you hear me okay?
Yep, I'm hearing you good.
Okay, good. Yeah, and I don't know, like when you look back on that experience, like why do you think before your perspective was more based on the result, or just like 8 hours?
Yeah, man, screen's frozen here. Okay, good. Why was my perspective like that? Thinking about the 8 hour bus trip, was that the question? Come
Yeah,
on. Okay. Let me start my video again.
there it is.
As much as I'd like to put it on some circumstances or something else, like I guess it was really just more selfish way of thinking, just not having as much perspective, not realizing that kids don't just get to fly to Hawaii to play a college baseball series and get per diem meal money on the road and get to stay in nice hotels and get to go to the beach on an off day and get to go to a luau on an off day. So like it was really the perspective piece for me. The other perspective piece for me, and this is my next question for you that I want to hear about, is like I'd also hurt my arm a little bit, like that off season going into grad school. That was kind of the biggest piece for me because it was just kind of like I always had baseball, and I had too much of my identity was on like I'm a baseball pitcher. So then it was like I hurt my elbow. I have to shut down for a couple of weeks. What I thought my identity was completely taken away from me. So it was kind of an eye-opening experience in the sense of like I had to realize that like I was more than just like a decent baseball pitcher in life. And like obviously I had a good friend group. I had good family support. I was doing well and everything, but I didn't really have that bigger picture perspective of just kind of like this is really special to be able to just play a game with your 30 best friends and show up to random fields and random stadiums, and you got administrators and behind the scenes people setting up the field for you, and you got live stats for everything, you got live video for everything. What I realized was how much other people had cared for me to just give me these opportunities to be in college sports, like from my youth coaches to my parents to my teammates to the college coaches themselves that recruited me, to then like the colleges having the infrastructure to live stream games, the umpires showing up to the games, like the whole just kind of like life. I had to really kind of reevaluate why I was doing things. And it was for all those other reasons that I like came back to of like, I'm not doing this for 3 cool t-shirts, and I'm not doing this for a free pair of Oakley sunglasses, and I'm not doing this to be able to post on Instagram that I'm playing in all these cool stadiums. Like I'm doing this because I love baseball. Like I'm doing this because I love competing. I love being on the mound. I love feeling in control. And I love having 40 teammates that have my back and also want to just go out there and compete and win and dominate baseball games. So that was the biggest perspective for me, was kind of like, no matter how nice the stuff we had, no matter how much meal money, how much cool gear I had, like it didn't really affect how I saw the game. And until I got to my last couple of years of college, like I didn't have that. So for you, obviously, season-ending collarbone injury and then a full off season, what have been your biggest takeaways from that perspective-wise?
Yeah. So the biggest thing is I realized something similar to you, it sounds like, is that, everything up until that point, really for the last year and a half, just baseball was who I was. Yep. And it still certainly is, right? It's still a huge part of who I am, but it kind of took that baseball being taken away from me to realize that like my life is great regardless of whether I go 3 for 4 on the field or I can't play at all. And I think on top of that, just that it really, like, you just can't take it for granted. And it wasn't, I'd never understood, because people all the time, like before, they always say that, right? Like, don't take it for granted. Don't take it for granted. Enjoy every day. But until I was hurt and like I physically couldn't play, it's like I didn't understand that. I didn't really understand it until like I experienced it. And I think that just something about that experience allowed me to then coming into this year. It's like I have our first scrimmage tomorrow, which will be the first game in 4 months for me. Yep. It's like, I'm just excited to like be out there again. And
yes.
maybe I think that speaks to, I'm sure this is true in life. I imagine I'll figure that out in the next 60 years or so,
Yeah.
hopefully more. It's like sometimes it takes like stepping away from it to like just really understand how lucky you are to be a part of it, and just to be that this is a part of your journey. Like,
Yeah.
so few kids for baseball like get to experience being older than 18 years old and playing competitive baseball. So yeah, that's definitely what I've taken away, just from being hurt and like having to step away from the game and have it literally prove to you that you have a great life outside of baseball as well, and that you can survive without it.
Yes. Yes. But then it's really sweeter and it's enjoyable. It makes it more enjoyable to enjoy an indoor 3 hour practice in the middle of December when you've been grinding, when you have that perspective. I'll tell you what, like when I initially hurt my arm, in the moment, I thought it was the worst thing that's ever happened in my life, right? Like in the moment, this is the worst thing that's ever happened in my life. Pretty easy life. That's the worst thing that's ever happened, but that's beside the point. Looking back on it, it's the best thing that ever happened to me. I would never have gotten this coaching job at Carleton had I not gone through that injury, had I not gained some of that perspective of like why I was doing it. But then on top of why I was doing it, everybody has a reason of why they're doing everything. So like how you motivate people, how you teach people, how you help people learn is like you have to try and, one, like we talked about, get to know them, but then two, like know what's driving them. And it can be different for different guys. So like for me, what I didn't understand before the injury was just kind of like I saw myself as just an arm. So then it was just kind of like when I didn't have this, like I lost a little bit of confidence up here. Well, now in the college setting, like hopefully there's not a lot, but inevitably there's 1 or 2 or 3 injuries every single year. So now I need to talk to those guys, talk them through of like, hey, like you're still in a good spot here. Like physically, we got to do what we got to do to rehab, prehab, get you in a good spot. But like, there's no reason to lose any confidence in who you are as a person or your ability on the baseball field. And just going on to deal with failure. Like I dealt with some failures, but like not as many that I needed to go through really hard times to then be able to help other people when hard stuff inevitably came up. And what I kind of like to think about, I think I saw it on TikTok, which there's some informational stuff on TikTok, I guess. You got to find the right spot. It was like, if you have a kid and you want to build them into the toughest leader that you know, and you want to build them into having a great skill set in whatever they're doing, being mentally tough, being really successful, being able to handle problems, being able to critically think in life, what would you put them through as a young kid? Like you probably wouldn't give them $100 allowance, and you probably wouldn't let them not make their bed and not clean their room. And you probably wouldn't let them slack and not do their homework. You'd probably put them through some hard stuff. And like, that's like my thought process of just kind of like the journey you're on, and everybody's on a different journey, and it's not linear. So there's flows to it, but like hard stuff that comes up on your journey only becomes a failure, becomes worse if you don't learn from it and use it as a way to help you get to that end destination. And it's like, if you never go through some of that hard stuff, you probably never get to that perspective level because things have just been too easy for you. So it's like, that was the biggest kind of eye-opening thing for me, was just kind of like, there's so much more other than just baseball, and everybody has a reason why they're doing it. And everybody is way more important than just what they're bringing to you on the diamond at all times.
Yeah, that makes sense. And like what you were saying about how how you wouldn't be coaching at Carleton right now, or you might not be if this didn't happen to you. And I remember like looking back on the summer I just had, there were a lot of things I did, like taking summer classes or even starting this like catching recruiting thing. I probably wouldn't have started it had I just played summer ball. And it's like, I think that, and maybe you would agree with this, like that experience, the whole, how it started like, oh my gosh, this is the worst thing that's ever happened to me. And then you get to the point where like you realize you actually got something positive out of it. Like that just lesson in itself, the next time something bad happens to you, maybe it'll just help you have that kind of perspective that, hey, I feel what I'm feeling right now. Like it'd be interesting to get Pilla's take on this, right? Like you feel what you're feeling right now, right? But in the back of your mind, through your own experience, you know that if history repeats itself, which I feel like it usually does in a lot of ways, like I'm going to be okay. And I'm actually I'm going to get better from this, learning from it. Like you talked about.
I agree 100% with that. And it goes back to the point of just kind of like, think about the first time, if you can remember the first time you struck out or the first time you had a terrible game catching, right? You're just kind of like in that moment. It's like, oh my gosh, this is the worst thing ever. Like, how am I ever going to figure this out? Right? Like, it's never as bad as you think it is. It's usually never as great as you think it is either. So like, just having that understanding and then using those experiences. I love that you said that point about your making this account and starting to help others, because that's what I saw the short times that I was in Rochester. Is like, now you're helping a lot of other kids. And I think for your career, I know how much you care about the game. And you know how much you care about the game. And your perspective from a high school kid into where you're at now as a junior has changed a lot, which is good because you're growing a lot. I think the great perspective for you is just kind of like, once you start like helping someone else in their journey, you see how special that it can be, right? And it's like, I'm sure hopefully you have one or two or three coaches or teammates or people that like had that impact on you and gave you that like, hey, either the confidence of like, I am a really good player, or they just motivated you of like, hey, this is what it takes to get to where I want to be. So all of that stuff, like I can still remember the first kid, and when we started summer lifting in high school, 2 years older than me, quarterback, and we had like 3 or 4 sets of front squat. I did 2, and I was going to move on to my next accessory lift. And he's like, Hulk, are we not doing our 3rd set of squats? I was like, the timer ran out. We're going to RDLs. And like, that was my perspective. Cause I was like, yeah, I'm in here. I'm putting in some work. He's like, no, we're doing our last set of squats now before we move on. And I'll always remember that moment, because it's like, I want to be the best possible athlete that I can be. And at that level, at that time, I was playing 3 high school sports. So I didn't know, but it was like, I knew I had to do every set and every rep in the weight room to get to where I wanted to be. And I didn't want to leave any of those stones unturned, because I didn't want to have any of those regrets or doubts as I was going through it. So that's the money perspective to have, of just kind of like, this is why I'm doing it. And then using those support system people to just kind of keep you in the right path.
Yeah.
That's like any other questions. This has been a great chat.
Yeah, no, thank you for joining me, Hulk. This has been awesome.
Of course.
But yeah, like catching questions wise, honestly, no. Like those were the main things I wanted to ask you about, is like, what do you look for in catchers? What things when they're young in college, like, do they just not know? Like, so if there's any kids who listen to this who are like, okay, well, I want to prepare for college catching, right? And it's like, well, so what things should I think about? And I'm really glad we touched on the communicating part, because I think in my experience, and it sounds like in yours too, communicating is just, it elevates your game as a catcher, but it makes your team and your pitchers so much better too. It's just like this, it's a multiplying thing. It just makes everyone better. But yeah, like, how about you? Is there any other catching things that you think would be really important for high school catchers to hear?
Yeah, we touched a lot. The first thing I would say, if you're not already, follow your Instagram account, because like that, like using where do you want to be? Okay, find the people that are already doing what you want to do in life. So then it's like, you're a high school kid, you want to be a college catcher. Sam's got multiple drills that you can work on every single day, whether you're at a yard, whether you're at a facility, whether you're in your backyard doing it, whether you're in your basement having your dad feed you some flips. So it's like, know what your goals are, and then find the people that are in the right spot. So it's like, find YouTube videos, follow Instagram accounts. If there's TikTok accounts, follow those. The last, I guess, little advice I could give as I was thinking about this, like kind of the smaller details of a catcher. So recruiting standpoint first, if you're a catcher and you're going to a showcase, especially if it's a showcase where you're going to do some sort of live scrimmaging, I immediately watch for, we talked about it a little bit, but I immediately watch for these high school catchers, how they communicate with these pitchers that they don't know. Because like we've talked about, the catchers need to be able to communicate, tell guys where they're going, what pitch is, what's the hitter doing in the box. But if you don't know what you're looking for, well, then it becomes hard to do that. So I immediately look, and it's like, before the bullpen, after the bullpen, as a catcher, go up and ask the pitcher the things we've talked about. Ask him what his put away pitch is. Ask him what he's confident in his off speed, what he can flip in fastball counts. Have him take you through a sequence like, hey, what's a sequence of pitches that you can get lefties out? How do you like to attack righties? Talking to them through that, because I see that as a coach. And then it's like, I see guys in the dugout and they're talking to their pitcher. They're like, ooh, what felt good? Did you like the slider call on that 2-2 count? All of that stuff. It's like the piece of communicating is at all times. So it's like if I see a kid at a camp that's talking to all these pitchers and trying to understand what they're doing, like that tells me he understands the game and he's going to help our pitching staff understand the game. So that's the piece I would say there. The last piece I would say, I remember you texted me and asked if there's any pet peeves that I had from catchers. Really not a lot. I'll give you one small one, and it's catchers communicating with umpires. It is now a skill in the game. And I have a question for you that I want you to answer at the end of this. Do you think MLB umpires knowing what pitch is coming from a robo, or not even robo ump, they know what pitch is coming, could that help them out? I think the obvious answer is yes, because like they know what pitch is coming. So then it's like, it's easier to call balls and strikes. That's like the debate that's going on right now. I saw on Twitter earlier today. So with that though, we know at the college level, we're not going to have that technology, and we're not going to be radioing into the umpires what pitch is calling. So knowing that as a catcher, like there's ways to communicate to umpires that are going to get you in better spots and get you more calls. So simple stuff right away is just kind of like, okay, you know what pitcher's throwing. Maybe you have a guy that really wants to get inside, has a good fastball, has two-seam run on it. Like he wants to establish his fastball inside. Well, that's the first thing you say to the umpire. After you introduce yourself, tell him your name, have a little small talk. You're like, hey, like my guy's got a nasty two-seamer. We want to establish the inside of the plate. Like anything special you need me doing to show you those pitches better, to get those calls better. Like it starts with that. My general rule of thumb is be positive with the umpires until it's late innings and it gets crucial. It's just like the piggy bank thing of like, if you come after them on the first ball or strike call, umpires are humans just like us, and humans work on emotions. So as much as you hope your umpires don't work on emotions and they're just black and white calls, like sometimes that is a piece of the game and a factor in the game. So it's understanding how to have those conversations, and like late in the game, if you need to get on a guy and say, that's our spot, that's our pitch, like we need to have that. There's a time and place for that. But a lot of times it's like, it's finding those subtle ways to kind of be like, hey, I'm on your side here, like, now, can you be on my side too and help me get some calls? My favorite thing to do as a coach is if we're trying to say a catcher set up in or out, pitcher hits his spot in or out. So say we got a catcher set up 3 inches off the black, pitcher dots it. I know from the dugout, it's probably 3 to 5 inches off the plate, right? Like at this level, if it's framed perfectly, you hit your spot. Like I know it's off the plate. What I'm going to say to my catcher, and luckily I talked to the catchers before this, so I pretend like I'm yelling at the catcher, but it's a way to get the umpire back on our side. So I go, Jack, where was that pitch? And then he tells me just a little bit outside. And then I go, okay, Jack, I need you setting up more on the black. You cannot be setting up your body frame outside that far because we need that call, Jack. Like set up, get on the spot where we're going to get that call. Subconsciously, I've already talked to Jack before the game and I was like, you're set up right there. This is where we want you set up. I just want to get in that umpire's head of like, hey, wait a second. Like he's going to maybe set up a little bit more there. So that next pitch that's dotted in his chest, we get that call. So it's those small things of being with umpires of like, asking them, hey, how can I get to that pitch a little bit sooner? What do you need me? How's my presentation? Like, do you need me doing something a little different so you can see that pitch better? Of like, because people just do not like, you're wrong. Like knowing they probably will be wrong. Like people don't like that. Just like you wouldn't like if the umpire, you strike out and the umpire's like, that's a bad swing. It's like, okay, I know that's a bad swing. A lot of times umpires know when they make a bad call. So it's just kind of like, they know they're going to make bad calls. We know they're going to make bad calls. Let's not be surprised by it. Let's somewhat support them and converse through that so that way we get more calls later in the game. It's still a work in process. Some of these MIAC coaches that have been doing it a while really, really know how to chat with the umps, but it's fun and it's part of the game, especially as a catcher. And then using that, I guess my final piece is like, you now know the zone when you're catching. If you develop a rapport with that ump, your at bats, you should have a slight advantage in your at bats. One, you know the zone. So, like, is he calling the outside pitch? Is he calling the up pitch? That might be, and this is getting a little higher level, but as a catcher, it's like umpire is not calling anything below the knees. He's calling pitches up. Okay, my normal approach as a hitter might be I want to sit like a mid-thigh fastball that I can drive. Well, now I know umpire is not calling that pitch. He's calling the up pitch. Okay, maybe my approach right away is I'm going to set my sights for that fastball at the top of the zone, knowing I got to start my swing sooner to get to that pitch and knowing the ump's calling that. So it's like use that information to your advantage. And it's like that's what I missed about catching when I did it in high school and college was just kind of like I know what the umpire's about. I know the zone he's got. Like I'm not a very good hitter, so I need this information to give me a chance to have quality at bats this year. So, yeah, that's kind of my final pieces. If you can, most important is managing your pitchers and being a good teammate and being a leader. But then that final piece, the elite catchers, it's like they also manage the umpires, which it's a hard skill to learn, but it helps out a lot.
100%. Yeah, I think that's an awesome point. It's right. At the end of the day, you're going to be back there spending more time with them than anyone else. And it's like a work environment. Like you'd rather have it be a good work environment than not. And like, I think that's always interesting. I'm sure you've experienced it too. Like there's umpires with different temperaments and different like ways they act. Like some of them don't want to talk to you for whatever reason, but then some of them want to talk to you and talk to you about stuff like off the field. So I think, yeah, that is like a super fun part of it is, I mean, you meet so many different umpires and I think especially in the MIAC, at least you get the same guys a lot, right? So you start to like, hey,
yes.
Like, good to see you again. So it's, yeah, that's fun.
And that's the piece too. It's just kind of like you maybe don't want to scream at a guy because you're going to probably see him again later in the spring.
Right.
It's because they're all connected. Or for me, it's like I don't want to scream at too many guys because then I coach all in the MIAC, then I still play amateur baseball in the summer, and it's the same umps in Minnesota that I'm coaching. They're umping me, and well, now they're calling my balls and strikes when I'm on the mound. Luckily, it's amateur baseball, so it doesn't really matter how many balls and strikes I'm throwing, but it's almost all connected, and it's like you're going to see them again. So like how you treat them, they're going to remember that for sure.
Yeah. I think that's an awesome point to end on. It's just that idea too that like they're just humans. Like everyone in baseball, your pitchers, the umpires, your teammates, coaches, like everyone's a human. So it's like at the end of the day, if you can build a good relationship with them, whatever capacity it's in, right? If it's the umpire, okay, like how can I help him like call a good game? What do I need to do for him to make it easier for him to call balls and strikes? And same thing with you were talking about with the pitchers, right? It's like, how can I help them perform better? Because like at the end of the day, as the catcher, if you can do that, your team is going to play better. You're probably going to get better calls. You're going to win more baseball games. Like everyone wins.
Yep. Absolutely. I got no closing thoughts after that. I thought it was a phenomenal chat. You got anything else on your mind?
No, that's all I got, Hulk. This was awesome.
Sweet. Well, have fun tomorrow.
Thank you.
4 months, first game.
Yeah.
Get after it. And now you know too, like you were a guy that took things so probably 1% too serious early in your career. You're gonna have guys, and now it's like dude, when you're free flowing and your brain is just like, I'm going to go out there and dominate, you're a freaking stud out there. So it's like, you're going to have freshmen on your team. Maybe I shouldn't be telling you this because I don't want you guys to get too good, but no, I want you guys to be good. Yeah. You're going to have freshmen on your team that have the same mindset as you. And you're just kind of like, just remind those guys of like, dude, there's going to be those growing pains. Like, you might not be able to see this end destination of where you want to get to, but you know your next step, right? So it's just kind of like your next step. Maybe you had a bad day. Like, let's get in the cage tomorrow. Let's get some better swings off, or let's go get some more receiving work in. Whatever it may be, it's like now you get to be a leader, which you have been. But now I feel like you're fully comfortable. You're really good where you're at. So now you really get to start to impact other guys.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Hulk. It's really impactful for me to hear that from you, who's like, you've been through it, but you're still in it, right? So it's like, yeah, I really appreciate that.
Of course, I got you. If you have any random questions as your Instagram account continues to get flowing too, text me literally whenever. Any random stuff that comes up. If you have a question on something, if a kid has a question on something, like I love ball. And I love guys that care about it and have put in time. So it's just kind of like I'm going to support those guys till the end of time.
Thank you, Hulk.
You bet. All righty. I'm going to go see how this Packers-Eagles game is going. I'm hoping the Eagles.
That's good.
Good stuff. Have fun tomorrow. Awesome.
Appreciate you, Hulk. You
See
as
you
well.
soon.
See you soon.
Peace.